business. It's the beginning of the year, and hopefully people are thinking about some of their business New Year's resolutions, and some of these might include what you're doing on the marketing front to try and bring in some new business this year. We have a very special guest today from MSP 360, Doug Hazelman. I'll be introducing him shortly. My name is Luis Giraldo. I'm the VP of Strategy at IT Glue. I also am a recovering MSP owner. In the sense that there's always so much to work on. Marketing is one of the big challenges for small MSPs, because my own preference is also to be doing the tech stuff and not the marketing stuff, and so it's definitely one of those things we have to work very hard at to produce results for, and to keep the habits going and all that stuff. So I'd like to thank Doug and MSP 360 for being here today as well. So I'd like to also mention a couple of housekeeping items. We have a Q&A button. This is the button to use if you have a question to ask of Doug or myself. Chat is where we will be sharing some of the useful resources and links throughout the presentation. And in case you're wondering, we are recording the webinar, and we'll be sharing it with everybody by email after some point this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So please stay tuned for the follow-up email with that. We also have in September coming up GlueX conference. This is going to be our third year running GlueX in Phoenix, and it's been a very thought leadership focused and business growth focused conference. We've had a sold out conference the last couple of years with some fantastic presenters, and we still have early bird pricing, which is fantastic. It's a great location, and we hope you'll join us. We have a variety of great sponsors joining the conference as well. This is a good opportunity to connect with some really strategic vendors, and as well as all your peers, and get some of that business stuff going for you. So please visit us at gluex.co to check out the conference. And as we get closer, we'll also be publishing the agenda and announcing some of the speakers that are coming to GlueX and so on. And with that, I'd like to introduce you all to Doug Hazelman. Doug, good morning. How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. It's a cold and rainy morning here in Vancouver, but you're in Florida. I hope you're not suffering too much from the falling iguanas and the cold winter.
No, it's actually it's warmed up today, so our 2 days of winter are over. So we're very happy about that.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know that you guys have been sort of on this track of helping MSPs think about marketing as well, and you're among one of the many vendors that is putting marketing programs and things in place to really help MSPs think about marketing. So thanks for sharing that knowledge with us today.
Yeah, no problem. And we've got a lot of great stuff coming for 2020 as well. So definitely keep an eye out for some new programs we're going to be launching later this year.
Awesome.
So great. So I guess we're here to talk about marketing, and I'll go ahead and take it away. And what we kind of wanted to talk about from an agenda perspective is start off with some basics. Everyone kind of has an understanding, but let's just reinforce those, especially as it relates to MSPs. Talk a little bit about business to consumer versus business to business marketing, because as MSPs, that's what you do. It's business to business. You're a business trying to sell to another business. So that's what that means. I'll talk a little bit about paid online advertising and some of the perils of that, but also some of the benefits, as well as, and Lewis, as you mentioned, how to find resources from vendors. So MSP 360, we have a number of things, and I know IT Glue through Kaseya, you guys have some things as well that you talk about, and then we'll round it out with Q&A. So you've got me here, you've got Lewis here. Feel free to ask us questions as we go through. So let's start off with the basics. Why do we do this? Why do we market? How do we market? When do we market? These are some of the beginning questions in terms of what we're doing here. Why we market? There's a couple of reasons. Obviously, name recognition is one of the most obvious, because you want people to know your name. You want them to know your brand. But at the end of the day, why we market is to lead to more sales. To grow your business. So the more people that know about you, the more people are aware of you. They then contact you, or you contact them through a campaign, and that leads to new business. In terms of how we do marketing, Again, it's a couple of different forms on that, but I like to break it down into two basic forms of marketing. There's online and offline. Now, online, it's fairly obvious. It's, it's the keywords, it's the content, it's, search engine optimization, Facebook ads, all those types of things. But offline is more person to person. It's where you actually go to an event, whether it's a local chamber of commerce, BNI meeting, something like that, where you're actually out there, you're representing the brand of your company, and you're meeting face to face and talking to people. And as vendors, we do this at conferences. All those booths, when you go to a conference like BlueX and you see all those booths, all those vendors, that's what we're doing. We're doing offline marketing at that point.
Duncan, you brought up BNI briefly, which I'd love to just touch on for a sec.
Sure.
I did BNI many years ago, and I see this conversation come up every once in a while in the social media groups like Facebook and Slack and whatnot. And I do find that it's valuable at certain stages of the business. A BNI is kind of predicated on the idea that you work with a group of people where there's no overlap in the industries that are represented by people in that group. And it's sort of a peer group. You hang out weekly to discuss referring business to each other and sort of educating the rest of the people in the group about your business and how to refer business to you. And so what I took from that is actually how key it is to know how to educate people on how to refer business to you. And I find that MSPs don't do that very much. And so whether you're working with a vendor that, let's say a firewall manufacturer that has a channel team that only sells direct to 100 plus user companies, and everything else below that, they refer to channel partners like MSPs, it's great to have some face time or some talk time with them to be able to educate them on your specialties, because this is what gets you top of mind. And it's the best way to sort of keep the referral train going, is that top of mind. So for those curious about BNI, I'd say give it a try if you're sort of in the early stages of learning how to market. It helps you articulate how you talk about your business, helps you perfect that 15, 30 second, 1 minute pitch, because that's the kind of stuff you're going to use in all the other environments, whether it's a networking meeting or just out there at a conference and so on.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, there's a lot of different offline activities. BNI is just an example. And, I talk to MSPs all the time, and they have a lot of different methods in terms of how they do offline within their community. The other thing is this idea of when do we market? I say all the time, especially if you have anything with your company logo on it, that is marketing, that is branding. And, so you think of this, okay, we're always marketing, but if you think about it in the sense of how you're doing it, when you're doing it, you need to think about the fact that you always need new business. It's feast or famine sometimes. I know, in MSPs I talk to, sometimes, hey, we're doing great. Other times, oh no, we don't have any new business. We need to get new business. So, when you think of it that way in terms of when, if you think of you're always doing it, you're always building what we call in marketing that lead funnel, or that funnel of potential customers, customers that you can continually reach out to. So from a when perspective, it's always, even if they're not ready to purchase or ready to talk to a salesperson or have that meeting today, if you have their information and you're constantly kind of trickling things out to them, as we call drip marketing, then that's something that you need to be aware of. Because as soon as you stop doing those types of things, because hey, business is good, so I'm going to stop. Guess what? In 6 months, you're going to be like, oh no, we need new business, and you haven't been doing any of that activity. Now you've got to start over, and it might be another 3 to 4 months before any of those leads start to turn into opportunities. So that kind of leads me to leads and lists. So, when we think about it from an email perspective, email marketing is effective if you do it correctly. And part of that doing it correctly is you need to have a source of leads, and you need to have those lists. And that goes to having a customer relationship management system, a CRM. And I've heard some people say, your PSA is not your CRM. Your PSA is great for your current customers, but it's not great for your leads in terms of the different types of things you can do in terms of email campaigns, creating landing pages, and all these other types of things to capture this information. There's a lot of options out there in terms of CRM systems. You don't have to go out and buy Salesforce. You can use something as simple as MailChimp. There's also, some CRMs that are specifically tailored to the MSP community. But when you think about building this list and creating, generating all these leads, you need a place to keep them so that you can then do activities with those leads, and something that then allows you to move them through the chain of, okay, I have their email. Now, guess what? I emailed them 15 times, and on the 16th time, they actually clicked and downloaded this white paper or this collateral that you put out there. Guess what? That moves them down the chain, because now they've taken an action. And that means that, hey, they might be top of mind. Let's follow up with them. That's where CRM becomes very, very important.
And one comment I have, Doug, which is kind of an interesting point on this topic of lists, is that, and I've had a little bit of the same challenge in my own MSP, is that building the list itself can be difficult. Where do you start? How do you start? How do you get content out there that is going to put people into your list? And so there's a few stages to that, obviously. One of them is, you mentioned the collateral and having something that people might see on the website or that you're sharing through social media that makes them want to download it. And that's a great place to start. And this is where a lot of vendors will offer the ability to co-brand collateral. It's a great piece of marketing material that you can put on the website that triggers somebody to want to download it. And also think not necessarily about the technical aspects of those solutions, because customers are often not interested in those, but think about how you translate that into the business needs of the customer. If you're working with a backup vendor, top 3 things to keep in mind as you plan, keep in mind for backup as you plan your year ahead. That kind of thing will maybe trigger business owners to be like, hey, I want to make sure that we're backing up correctly, and they'll download, and then you start to build your lead list that way. So definitely a key piece of generating that list in the first place is sharing that content.
Yeah, definitely. And it's there's a lot of different ways and how you can start to build that list. But once you've got a method for that, I talked about this last point here of keeping your funnel full, because, as I mentioned earlier, as soon as you run out of these contacts or these leads, business starts to dry up. Or if you stop, working on them, then business is going to slow down, and then you're going to have to basically start all over again and start these new campaigns. So marketing's it's a constant activity, but it doesn't take all day, every day. That's kind of the other part. You don't have to devote 100% of your day to it, but you do need to devote some time each day to your marketing. The other important aspect in marketing, and as marketers, we talk about this all the time, is defining your target. And this is basically the who. Who are you trying to reach? Who are you marketing to? What kinds of activities do they do? Where do they lurk online? And we talk about offline. What kind of things did they do offline? And that kind of goes to the method of understanding, hey, the kinds of people I'm trying to reach, they typically are on LinkedIn, or they're in Facebook, or depends on, again, depends on your vertical as well, on where they might hang out. But understanding who they are and the best method to reach them is extremely important to help you understand how to build that list. And marketing, again, is a lot of trial and error. Some things work great, other things don't. And if you try something and it doesn't work, refine it. And if maybe your target is too broad, think about narrowing it. Or if you're not getting anything because your target's too narrow, think about broadening it. So it's an iterative process, and something that worked today may not work in 6 months, because things change, attitudes change, technology changes, whatever it may be. You kind of have to constantly be thinking about how do I continually improve and define that target to build that funnel.
Doug, there's a couple questions that are sort of relevant to
Sure.
To the conversation. One of them, Charles asks, what CRM tools are recommended specifically geared to the MSP? And I think there's maybe two different things to consider in that question. One is sort of the lead generation part of it, and the other is sort of the actual opportunity management.
Hmm.
And so I find that because we market not only to find new prospects, but we also in some cases market to existing customers. I think those are sometimes better handled with something that is better at the email portion, at the actual campaign management specifically. And if your PSA can do those things, then great, you sort of have it all built in. Um, but if not, then you kind of break out the lead generation part of it into a tool that is specifically designed to actually allow you to create the web forms and track the downloads and to perhaps score your leads as they engage with more of your content. And not all the PSAs really have that functionality at that level from the marketing perspective.
Yeah.
But then once you obtain a lead from perhaps even an existing customer, then you sort of translate that into your CRM, to your PSA for actually managing the opportunity. Because this is, if the customer is going to inquire about a backup solution or a server upgrade or these things, and you already have the products there, you can associate the products with the opportunities, and it gives you a sort of a one single pane of glass to manage the actual opportunity. So I would consider those two things. What are your thoughts, Doug?
No, I mean, definitely you want, in terms of how we operate, here at MSP 360, it is all kind of linked together, right? We don't use PSA, but, our CRM system is linked to our sales system. So, there's one side that's marketing, where marketing takes care of it. And then once that, those leads turn into a possible sales opportunity, they get passed over to the sales side. So, having that linkage there into, like you said, and then when they become a customer, having that then translate into your PSA, that's why I kind of mentioned, if there's something that does tie into your PSA system that has that management, those campaign things, that's something that you may want to look for.
And definitely, I guess it speaks to the need to identify, or business process map your flow of how that's going to work. You have a
Hmm.
CRM tool or campaign management tool that's going to generate a lead. The next step is for somebody to work that lead into your CRM, create the opportunity, create the customer, all those things. If they're happening automatically and automatedly, great. If not, then somebody has to manage that. But also there needs to be somebody who engages with that lead or prospect or customer at the time of the inquiry to make sure that we're offering the right thing. And so there's going to be a manual touch. And obviously, as your processes get more mature over time, you might find that you want to work with more powerful tools.
Hmm.
I've seen MSPs move to Salesforce, for example, once they get to a certain level of maturity, because Salesforce lets them handle pretty much the front to back of everything. It's deeply integrated with campaign management software, and lead generation tools and lead scoring and the reporting, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's definitely start with your PSA if it has some of that functionality, and build that out from there.
Yeah. But, it's always good to keep looking as well. So, but I guess when I said Salesforce, people look at Salesforce, it can be expensive and daunting, just because of how big it's become. But start simple. You don't have to start off with Salesforce and then try to figure it all out. You can start simple and move your way up to there as business dictates. Um, Next up is this idea of referrals. And, I ask MSPs all the time, what is your, what do you do for marketing? And typically they say we do referrals. um, we get all of our new business through referrals. And that's a great thing, because nothing is better than word of mouth marketing, something you don't necessarily have to pay for, where your customers are so happy with you, they tell other people, and then those people come to you. Referral marketing is absolutely the best, because you don't really have to do anything other than provide great customer service and make sure your customers are happy, and they will recommend you to other customers. But then the flip side is, if you're not getting a lot of referrals from your customers, is do you need some sort of referral program? And I've seen referral programs implemented a lot of different ways. In fact, I was at my dentist yesterday, and my dentist has a referral program. It's a little sign in the bathroom. It says, if you bring us 2 new customers, you get a gift card, or a picnic basket set, or they have a couple of different things that they will give you if you bring in new customers. which, from a dentist perspective, they're just trying to get whoever they can. But from an MSP perspective, you may not be trying to get every business out there. You might specialize in a vertical. There might be certain types of customers that you want. Lewis, I know you had some thoughts and ideas on this, because if you're just offering a $100 gift card for every referral, you may end up with customers that you don't want.
Yeah, I guess my thought on this, and we can agree to disagree. I don't want to incent the wrong thing. Like, I don't want people to refer business for the sake of the $100. I really would prefer that there's a good fit, and that we are turning those customers into raving fans, and that's why they want to refer us. And so I think there's definitely, in my case, a specific motivation. But certainly the time I've spent trying to educate those customers a little bit on the kind of referrals that we're looking for. We've done this sometimes, every few years when, we go through a little bit of hey, maybe it's time to reach out to some of our customers and see if we can grow the business a little bit. We've sort of profiled the type of customer we're looking for. And it's interesting to see how this has changed over the years, because, in the beginning, it's like, we're looking for a customer with 10 plus seats kind of thing. Today, if we sent that same email, we'd be looking for a customer with 30 plus seats. And so, it has definitely evolved. But again, educating the person that's potentially referring business to you on the exact profile of the kind of prospect that you're looking for can be super helpful. Even just, and this is something that happens in BNI a bunch as well, is who do you know that looks like this? Who do you know that is a business in insurance that has 30 or more employees? And many times people is like, oh yeah, I know somebody, and if they like you and you've done great work for them, they're going to introduce you. And so a lot of it is just asking.
Yeah. And that, like I said, a program could be just that, right? Like saying, hey, here's the kind of, telling your customers, here's the kinds of customers I'd like. If you know any, that's a program in of itself. Program doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give them an incentive. So let's ask the audience, in terms of, do you currently offer a referral program? So we've got a live poll here that will go, and we'll feel free to put in your answers. So we've got a kind of a not yet in terms of a formal program. Yes.
Now that last question looks like it got cut off. That last option is yes, with an incentive program and ideal prospect definition, meaning you're actually very explicitly defining the kind of customer you're looking for in the referral.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We'll share these results with everybody in a moment, as soon as we've had a few seconds for everybody to respond. But I find that this is also an evolution of the MSP itself. Like you kind of need to be ready for referrals, and you need to be handling your service desk, and your support house has to be in order. It's really tough to go out and ask for referrals when you haven't been delivering on service, and this happens with many things. Obviously, even working with existing customers, it's really tough to go and do a QBR and surface the opportunity for new projects when you haven't been keeping your support house in order and delivering on the other tickets that are being opened.
Yeah.
And so I think it all starts with obviously having great service and making sure customers are being taken care of. I think we have, there we go. Let's go ahead and share those results.
Yeah.
There we go. So definitely lots of opportunity for people to put a little bit of structure into the referral stuff that they might be doing. Hey?
Yeah. So, and again, a program doesn't mean you have to offer them a $100 Amazon gift card. It just means that you have a process in place to tell your customers, hey, if you feel free to refer customers to me. These are the kinds of customers that I really like. If you're happy with my service, let these types of people know. That's in of itself is actually a program, because you've thought about it and you've put that program in place.
And there's so many different things you could do. I see people actually pay cash money. I see other people provide a credit on the next bill. I
Mhm.
see people just say, yeah, I just take my customer for lunch as a thank you. And I find in most cases, most of my customers have never been motivated by the money aspect of something like that. It's never
Yeah.
been on the table, to be honest, in my case. But we make a point of obviously being very appreciative and thankful. A lunch meeting or lunch outing or something like that is always appreciated. So yeah, definitely whatever works for your style and your type of customer, consider trying it with a couple of people. You don't have to roll it out really wide right off the bat. You can try it a couple times with some of your best customers, some of the people that like you the most, and so on.
But always be thinking about, how do I get more referrals? Because that's, again, one of the best ways to get new business. Okay, so let's change gears a little bit. Just a couple slides here in terms of types of marketing: business to consumer and business to business. Business marketing to consumers is really kind of a lot different than marketing to businesses. Uh, Even though we're most familiar with all the marketing messages that we get flooded with every day, whether it's a radio commercial, TV commercial, ads on Facebook, a lot of times, what they're marketing to is an individual. They're trying to get your attention. It's not about what you do for business. It's about, hey, you've liked these other brands. Maybe you like our brand. We know you're interested in these types of clothing or whatever. And that's really where the online platforms shine, because that's where they build all this profile data. So they know your interests and likes and political affiliations and all these different types of things. And that's why when we talk about data mining and all the data that's out there about you, that's where this is being used. It's being used to market to you. Another trend, and some vendors do this as well, is the idea of influencers. You've probably heard of Instagram influencers. Somebody with 1 million followers, they tweet that they're wearing this particular shirt or that they're using this hair gel or whatever. And people pay them to do that. I actually saw on the news the other day that there's actually a toad. Yes, an actual reptile toad, that's an Instagram influencer. This lady puts this toad in these interesting different juxtaposition things, and she can get paid $1,000 a post for this toad. So
it kind of reminds me of the sysadmin type accounts that exist on Twitter, where they just make fun of the silly and not very smart things that people do. And it's kind of an interesting way to create some just make people aware of some of the stuff that's going on that you would not normally say as yourself, right? That's so
correct.
funny.
Yeah, and these are things that typically aren't going to work when you're trying to market to a business. So when you're doing business to business, marketing to business, that's the model that MSPs use. And going back to this targets, right, is even though you're trying to market to a business, there's going to be individuals in that business that you're trying to target. So that's the idea of different targets or personas. And personas is, I guess, a new term I've just introduced. I didn't talk about it in the basics, but a persona is you taking a look at who's your ideal customer. So there might be the ideal
definition.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the ideal business that you're trying to target, or businesses, but then who are the individuals within that business that you have the most success with? Is it the gatekeeper secretary? Is it the actual owner? There can be different personas that you're trying to reach within those types of customers. So that's the idea of persona, is you've got different targets. So the point there is messaging and different messages. What might be of interest to one person in the company may not be of interest to another person, right? So the CEO or the business owner, they might be interested in increasing profits, and that's all they think about all day long is increasing profits. So how can IT help them increase profits would be a good message for them. Where you've got the gatekeeper, or the secretary or the office manager, who you've had success with, they may be thinking about other things like, I'm afraid to click on anything because the news has scared me so much about malware and ransomware and all these other things.
Yeah.
So they might be like to know that, hey, I can be protected and I don't have to like freak out. by clicking on these invoices and sending the money to the wrong people and all these types of things. And that's where pain points come in, right? When you're talking about these personas or people, what are their, not necessarily pain like physical, but what are they thinking about all the time? What are they afraid of? What is, where they could make your life easy, make their lives easier. And again, this is going to vary from business to business, industry to industry. Malware is top of mind, phishing, those things, those topics are extremely popular right now. There's a new story every week. Just don't talk about MSPs getting hacked. But
this part of the pain points is interesting, Doug, because definitely over the years, I've seen that smaller businesses seem to have a higher threshold for pain, which is kind of reversed from what you'd expect. But one of the interesting things is that business owners of smaller businesses haven't really started to connect the dots in terms of the cost to the business when there is a ton of risk or when there's a ton of pain points. Whereas the slightly larger businesses, 15, 20, 30 people, the business owners are hopefully moving past that point of like, oh, we can deal with that in-house, or we can fix that, or we don't care if this is down for a couple of days kind of thing. Especially the ones that are in a business that's growing or need, for operations to be very smooth all the time. And so there's definitely sort of something to be said about the business size that you're marketing to in this type of scenario. And so this is sort of our own evolution as an MSP has been over time. We've really started to target the slightly larger businesses than we originally started with, because they just seem to get the pain point and or the need for insurance, if you will, which is a lot of what MSP sales is predicated on in their business. And so that's definitely helped a bunch.
Yeah. And that, the other thing is verticals, right? You mentioned that a little bit, but it does make marketing easier. If all you're going after is dentist offices or lawyers or accountants, or healthcare, if that's your specialization, that's your vertical. It allows you to refine your message because now you can target easier instead of having to, I have to market to lawyers and doctors and dentists and vets, and all these different types of things. You can say, hey, I'm just going to specialize in one vertical. Now, that doesn't mean you can't expand to a different vertical later on down the road, but I think that's a lot of times where verticals come in, because you get that comfort in working with those businesses and the business software that those companies use. And it makes sense.
And the comment I have, Doug, about this is that it's really interesting. In a webinar with Paul Dipple a few months ago, one of the things that came up was whether there was any data that provided proof that focusing on a vertical as an MSP it makes any difference to the growth rates or the profitability of an MSP. And what Paul showed at that time was that there was no data that supported the idea that being in a specific vertical provided any kind of advantage, and that MSPs that are across many verticals are growing equally profitable or whatever. But what's interesting is that on the marketing side, it 100% is so much easier to address a very specific customer in a specific vertical, because even as simple as being able to make a mention, hey, are you a dentist office using this software or that software? You get the chance to appear to be more knowledgeable when you're targeting a specific vertical. I can't tell you how many times I see MSP marketing that is just, we do it all. That kind of doesn't really help me sort of find a pain point connection or something that really wants to make me call you because I'm going through this particular issue with my specific software, or doesn't tell me that my business or how to work with our type of customer. And so for sure, important to focus on the vertical and that marketing piece.
Yeah. And then, that last point is think outside the box. Look at what your competition is doing and do something different. It's always easy to say, right? But you need to set yourself apart in terms of the market. And if you've got competitors that are, you see them doing these certain things all the time, if you just do what they're doing, then you're not differentiating yourself so much. But if you do something different, think outside the box a little bit, it can definitely help in terms of your efforts, as long as you keep in mind, who you're trying to target, who you're trying to reach, all those types of things. But always kind of think about different ways that you can do stuff. And a lot of times things don't necessarily cost a lot of money in order to do this. It's just, it's just a matter of, hey, I'm going to do a special program for dentists, or, for whatever, that's going to be different than my competition, and roll with it and see how it goes.
So I wanted to maybe jump into some of the questions that are, related to some of the stuff we've been discussing so far. Doug, one of them is, Simon asks, is B2C relevant, business to consumer? And my thought on that, and I'll let you give your thought as well, is that when you go to social media platforms, you are marketing to the consumer primarily. You're not marketing to businesses through social media, maybe in LinkedIn a little bit, but ultimately these are individuals that maybe have some role of influence within their companies and are able to sort of expose what you do to their bosses or the decision maker and whatnot. So you kind of do have a degree of B2C in your marketing activities. And part of it is just being able to address some of the pain points of even the end user to sort of get connected in through that way. And so I think you kind of need to speak to all levels of pain points in the company, not just sort of the business owner, business risk levels, because sometimes you get referrals through the strangest places, right? We've gotten referrals from an employee at another company who had a friend that worked at another company be like, hey, it was so great how you helped me with this issue with my email. And it has nothing to do with business risk or marketing to the business. It really just had to do with a consumer specifically getting a problem solved and so on. Now, there's also a lot of MSPs that do a bunch of residential work. And so in that sense, there's the business model, a B2C, and then there's the marketing model, B2C, right? What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. It's, I said typical, B2B is typical for most MSPs, but in terms of, like you said, if you're doing break fix or residential, then you may be trying to reach the consumer. And it may make sense for you to run a radio ad in your local market or something like that, to say, hey, I can fix your computer, or whatever the case may be. So, you know your business best as the MSP and who you're trying to reach. But it's this idea of, you need to define who it is that you're trying to reach, whether it's an individual or an individual within a company, that maybe will adjust your message to that, or what you present to them, or the information that you try to share with them a little bit different than just casting this wide net and trying to reach everyone. Any other questions on that topic?
Fernando had an interesting question, which is, how do you ask for referrals? And one of the follow-up parts of his question is, do you create an email campaign for this, or only decision makers during your QBRs? And the one thing I'll say definitely about the QBRs is I would probably personally never ask for a referral during a QBR. At this point, I'm really in a QBR trying to focus specifically on that customer, on their needs, and not necessarily trying to get the customer to think outside of their own business. So I personally would stay away from asking for referrals during a technology review or QBR. For anybody wondering, a QBR is a quarterly business review or quarterly business report, where MSPs regularly meet with their customers to discuss, the targets of what they want to do with their customer in the next little while. But asking for referrals, in my case, has been sometimes as simple as an email to the individual business owner, be like, hey, we've smoothened out support really well. Things are going really, really nicely with your support for your company. We're wondering if you know anybody that is, like this, and that you can introduce us to. And a few times we've had people actually respond with like, yeah, actually, I just was chatting with somebody the other day who said that their IT is a pain. And so maybe I'll introduce you. And so they maybe hadn't thought of you as a referral when they first talked to that prospect about it. But as soon as you brought it up, all of a sudden it triggers something, and it made them think about it. So definitely just asking the question, even if you don't expect an immediate connection to somebody, will trigger top of mind, which is so important in the referral part.
Yeah, and like I said, I talked about my dentist, right? They have a referral program, for their patients to bring in new patients. And if your customers have a referral program, tell them, hey, you have a referral program. I work on referrals too, right? You don't have to have say, I'm going to give you an incentive to do it, but you just say, hey, by the way, I saw that you have this referral program. My business operates in a very similar manner. So if you're ever out there, talking to someone that has IT needs, think of me, something like
Yeah.
that.
Right on. Well, this next topic is so controversial. I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, it is paid online advertising. And it kind of rolls back into what you were just saying in terms of when you're online, you are trying to reach they typically, it's an individual that's going to see it, but it's in terms of your message and how you get to them. And the one we think of most is the Google model, which is pay per click, which is what PPC stands for. You bid on keywords, and when someone clicks it, they charge you. And if what they clicked on was compelling enough for them to stay on your website and give you their email address, and great, woohoo! But it sounds easy on the surface, but the reality is it's very difficult. Keywords, is a science, and specifically in the IT support industry. And then the bidding, because based on how much you're willing to bid for a term or something depends on your placement in those first set of results in the ads. If you're going to be the top one, or if you're going to be all the way at the bottom, or maybe even on the second or third page. So it's all a money game, and those types of things. And then as we mentioned, I've heard as well from other MSPs, is in keywords and phrases, some of the words and phrases related to IT support aren't available. And now, Lewis, I know you had a point on that you wanted to make as well.
Yeah, my MSP has been a Google partner for many years, and one of the things that Google has really clamped down on is these IT support related keywords, because there's so much phishing and scamming going on through these types of keywords. So it's definitely really tough, and customers have become a little skeptical about these support ads and whatnot. But as a Google partner, one of the interesting things is that Google will let you use certain types of banned keywords and or brand stuff in your ads as a result. And so you go through a process of verifying the business, and even if you're not selling a bunch of G Suite or Chrome Enterprise or what have you, you can still become an authorized Google partner to be able to apply to get some of these keywords allowed in your ads. And so consider that if you feel that your keyword marketing is going to be a key piece of your solution or of your play. So I just wanted to make that comment, because it is really more difficult these days to get those keywords in your ads. But with that said, there's so much to be said about content marketing and the specific business key points of the target verticals or target customers that you're trying to get to. I've published a couple of things on my blog, which are, the value of quantifying the value of managed services, one of the articles that has had a lot of action over the years. And I find that those things have no IT support related type of things, but they still come up in a lot of the IT related searches simply because of keyword mapping and keyword relationships, even though I'm not specifically marketing for those or paying for those keywords.
Yeah. And that's kind of the flip side on Google is, there's the free way to do it, which is just generate content that shows up in searches, right? Search engine optimization, which is an art in and of itself. But the more content you have on your site, as it relates to what you do, then the more likely is that maybe it'll show up in a search when someone searches on that topic, or on those types of things. So there's we could do a whole webinar on how to Google.
and maybe we should. It's an interesting follow-up topic for sure.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, and this is true for all of these platforms, is budget. You may bid a lot on a keyword, but if you set your budget at a certain limit, you may hit your budget in one day, because you paid to be on top, but you ran through all the money that you had allocated for that. If you don't set a budget or a limit, then watch out, because costs can very quickly go out of control. So that's something to keep in mind on all of these is make sure that you set limits on how these things work, because otherwise, if it's popular, you're going to end up spending all your money just on these campaigns. And if you're not getting enough new business to support it, then why are you doing it?
So true, Doug, and related also to Kathy's question in the Q&A, of how much you set aside for marketing. Um, I feel like few MSPs in their early stages of beginning to do marketing are actually, sitting down to think about a budget holistically across the many different ways of marketing. And so this is where it becomes a real surprise in some cases. I actually had looked into this before, but I think it's the U.S. Small Business Administration. If you're under 5 million in revenue, they recommend that you spend like 7 to 8% of your gross revenue on marketing and advertising. And that's as long as you have like a 10 to 12% net profit margin, which most MSPs that are growing and are profitable have at least that.
Yeah.
And so, 7 to 8%, Kathy, to answer your question, is kind of gross revenue is what we see typically being spent. Now, if you can have a yearly planning session and sit down and be like, okay, what does 7 to 8% of a gross revenue look like? And how are we going to split that up through the different marketing campaigns? Then it's definitely an interesting exercise to go through. But most smaller MSPs are like, let's try this. Let's try keywords today. And certainly you can find some surprises as soon as you run through all those clicks.
Yeah. And I have some personal experience in it as well, in terms of a business that I used to own. So it's you can spend a lot of money without a lot of results. So Facebook, this is the other popular one. Again, Facebook allows you to really drill down in your personas just because of the amount of data they collect on people. Google does it the same, but a lot of times at Google, people just type in a search term. Where Facebook, you're trying to be in their feed, you're trying to be in front of their face. They do have a lot of options in terms of location, demographics, interests, behaviors, all, who they're friends with, all these types of things. Which, if you can get that science done really well to hit your personas and hit your targets, then great. But, at the end of the day, one of the best things for Facebook, I think, is, getting people to like your page and leave reviews. Because once they like your page, now you can just use Facebook to push information out, right? You can post a video to Facebook, or you can post content to Facebook, and people are going to see it. So from a lead perspective, if you've got a way to get them to like your Facebook page, then you're much better off than maybe trying to pay to show up in their news feed when there's already a ton of ads for everything else in their news feed, and most people just ignore them anyway. And then of course, LinkedIn, and LinkedIn really is the business to business marketing resource, because, the joke used to be, you only go to LinkedIn when you're looking for a job. I think that's changed quite a bit, especially with Microsoft's ownership, but, they've created a lot of different ways and tools for you to target, people who are on LinkedIn and who are checking LinkedIn. They do keyword, similar types of things to keyword advertising. So you're bidding, for impressions and those types of things. You've probably heard of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which, allows you to, use it in order to help build your funnel. But at the end of the day, if, because LinkedIn has so much information about the business that they work for and what they do, just trying to, do LinkedIn connections with people, and then posting content to your LinkedIn profile, can actually be very valuable, and you don't necessarily have to pay for it. And of course, if, the businesses you're targeting, if they're not on LinkedIn, then, if they're not checking it every day, like maybe they are Facebook or Googling every day, you're going to see limited results. So that's another part where understanding your target and, is your target, are these people, are they likely to be on LinkedIn, maybe on a daily or even, a couple times a week basis, or do they not even know what LinkedIn or how to spell it is?
One of the questions I always ask myself, Doug, with relation to LinkedIn is, should I try to market as myself or should I try to market as the business?
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is our business LinkedIn page doesn't have a ton of followers, but I have a bunch of connections, and so it's always sort of that interesting interplay of like where is the content, where does the content best sit as marketing content? And I find that in most cases it feels better to me if I create the content as a business, but share it as an individual. But what are your thoughts on sort of that dynamic of where and how you share content on LinkedIn?
Well, I think you're right. I think doing it, as an individual, and kind of becoming a subject matter expert to these people, that's obviously tied to your brand, to the company that you work for, or maybe you own, is really important, because at the end of the day, people work with people. You don't, and especially in MSP, because you're dealing with a lot of small businesses. MSPs are small businesses themselves. That people person to person connection, I think, is very important. They want to know that they're dealing with who they're dealing with, versus just a company putting out these messages. It's like, well, that's very impersonal. And I think on LinkedIn, if you have to have a company page, obviously, but then from your personal profile, I think that's where you go in and you start to make these connections, is on a personal level. So that way they see your name and hopefully your company, as you're doing this, and that leads to brand awareness.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm curious to know how people are, how or if people are doing this. I think we have a live poll coming up, which will give us some of those answers.
Yes. Oh, look at that right there. You're psychic. So live poll: is your MSP running paid online advertising? So
Yeah, we'll
interested
give people a few moments to answer. In the meantime, Priscilla had this question, which is, how do you get to the top of the list on Google Maps, for instance? If somebody were to Google or search for managed service providers in Texas, and I find that one of my MSP's customers here in Vancouver is a leading digital marketing firm, and one of the things they talk about all the time is how secretive Google's algorithms are on some of these things, and you never really know what's going to get you to the top of Google searches, which is why the spam email you get about, hey, we can promise to get you to the top of Google, are so fake. But I find that it's a combination of things in many cases. A business that has a lot of really great Google reviews, for example, is always going to get a higher result on a Google listing that is organic. And so I would definitely make sure that as part of your marketing strategy that you're selectively getting people to provide a Google review and things like that, especially if you're leveraging Google specifically for some of your paid advertising or as part of your actual strategy. All right, so we have some results here. 43% of you have never tried paid online advertising. Another 43 have tried, but with little success. And only 15% of you are using it and leveraging as part of your ongoing lead gen process. So what do these answers tell you, Doug?
It tells me what I expected is, for MSPs, it's not necessarily always viable to do paid online advertising. And again, I point to the fact that, you're trying to target, people in smaller businesses. You're not trying to target the consumers. It's just, it's very difficult. And to the, what was it, 6%, 7% that said that they're using it effective, that they're using it, they figured it out, and they figured out a method that works for them. But, it really can be difficult to try to figure that out. And I don't think it should be your go-to necessarily for MSP advertising, for MSP marketing. Something to maybe to try down the road, but I think there's a lot more easier ways to get started in marketing than just trying to pay your way to the top.
Yeah, no doubt.
Unless you got the money to do it, then hey, go for it.
Well, I think, you still have to be fiscally responsible in those types of things. And, you have to have a sense of where your dollar marketing spend is going. And so I've always been very trigger shy of things that I can't necessarily get a handle psychologically of what the results are going to be. And I'm sure if I'm feeling that, other people might be feeling that. So it's definitely seems like a black hole sometimes, but this is why trying it in small chunks with very limited budgets can be interesting to see if you get any traction. But consistency, I think, is key, and you need to have content that is supporting those things. And I find that doing some of the AdWords with specific content can be very powerful as well, not just a random phrase that is going to sort of sit there idle by itself, but rather something that generates interaction with some of your content is really powerful.
Yep. So not exactly, in terms of, paying, right, switching to the next topic, is resources from vendors. So as an MSP, you work with multiple vendors, and guess what? The more product you sell from that vendor, the more successful the vendor is. So the vendor has a vested interest in you being successful and selling more of their product. So it's kind of like it's like a masked referral, so to speak. But guess what? You sell more MSP 360 backup, MSP 360 makes more money. So it's that really that simple. So vendors want to help you, and definitely go to your vendors and ask, what do you have to help me market services. And in terms of collateral and those types of things, what you want to look for is not something like your customer doesn't care that it's MSP 360, or they may not care that you use IT Glue for documentation, but what they want to know is what's the importance of backup, what's the importance of documentation, and how to message that to the people that you're trying to reach. So definitely check your vendors. A lot of them have blogs. MSP 360, I think we're going to share some links here in the chat to some of the resources that we have available. And these are resources that you can download, brand it yourself, and then give it out to your customers. We have one it's a poster for anti-phishing, that you just put it up in the customer's office. And you may not think of it as marketing because it's an existing customer, but from a branding perspective, if people go into the break room and they see that and they see your name attached to it, that may lead to more referrals, because now, hey, yeah, my IT company is this company because I see their poster, and they'll tell their friends or whatever. So especially if they're happy with your service. So again, all these different types of materials can definitely help. There's also sales materials, presentations. Almost every vendor has this. Check their blogs, and when you're talking to your vendors, ask them. Say, hey, do you have any marketing materials to help me sell backup? Because chances are very, very good that they actually do. Now, the other thing is not necessarily vendors, but companies out there, and there's no shortage of them, that are offering marketing services to MSPs. And I talk to several every week, it seems like. I go to some of their conferences, but there's a lot of companies out there that are offering to help you market. And I am not going to make any recommendation on any one in particular. They each have their strengths and weaknesses. And again, it's finding out what works for you. Some just offer content, this idea of syndication, where they write the content, and then you put it up on your blog. It's syndicated, it's automated, whatever. Others offer different templates and kits that you can use for online campaigns or even mailers and those types of things. But at the end of the day, they all want your money. And just like paid online advertising, budgets and all those types of things. So, find what's going to work within your budget, and so that way you're not necessarily wasting your money, but also understand that all of these require input from you. So if you do enlist the help of a company, they're helping, they're not doing, typically. So there's still work that you need to do. Just because you bought this kit, or you have this content syndication or whatever it may be, there's still stuff that you have to do. You still have to have a list in order to send this stuff out to. If it's mailers, you gotta, you have addresses, email, you gotta have email addresses. So there's still a lot of work that you have to do in order to get that data in order to send this great stuff out. So definitely keep that in mind. And solution specific marketing. And Louis, I think this one is yours here.
Yeah, if you could just advance one more slide. One of the things I want to talk about is that as an IT Glue partner, you also get free access to a ton of MyGlue sales enablement materials if you're trying to get MyGlue deployed within your customer ranks. But also there's this really powerful platform called Kaseya Powered Services. And for those that aren't aware what Kaseya Powered Services is, it actually contains many sales and marketing assets that you can use to win more business, grow your monthly recurring revenue, because it's no secret that sales and marketing is one of the top level things that MSPs are always thinking about that they're having a lot of difficulty with. And so to get access to all of this, give us a shout on our webinar specials slide, which is coming up shortly. And since you're already an IT Glue partner, you can use your IT Glue login to access many of the other Kaseya umbrella company product resources, including ID Agent, Rapid Fire Tools, BMS, BSA, Unit Trends, to name a few. But so if you're interested in learning more about identity and access management, for example, or how to sell dark web monitoring, you can find that type of resource there. And I find that sometimes a lot of the campaigns or specific things that we want to do from a marketing perspective are focused around a topic. And so these resources can really help people in just getting a little bit of direction in where to go. Mm-hmm. We also have ongoing webinars on this kind of stuff. One of the upcoming webinars that we have is with Juan Fernandez. For those of you that don't know, I think a couple years ago, Continuum held at their conference, they held a Shark Tank type panel where MSPs had to pitch Barbara Cochran, among other people, who is a real estate mogul, on how they would deploy a managed services security provider program to their customer base. And Juan Fernandez was one of the guys that pitched the Shark Tank there on what they would do. And so he's a super savvy marketing guy that we're doing a webinar with on February 5th. So definitely check that out. Visit us at itglue.com/go-to-market to sign up for that. I think you'll have lots of really, really great insight on your go-to-market strategies. And we've sort of been answering Q&A along the way, but here is the link to our webinar specials. Please definitely visit us at itglue.com/marketing webinar. We'll also be following up in the email with all the resources and links after the fact, as well as the recording from the webinar. So stay tuned for that. One of the webinar specials we're offering is actually a free scan by ID Agent to get a real-life example of one of your clients' credential health. So for those of you who don't know, ID Agent scans the dark web for compromised credentials. And one of the interesting things is that I still find every day that customers in the small business space think that they're immune, like to phishing and to scamming and this kind of stuff. They feel that nobody's after them because they're too small. But it's just quite the opposite. Like whether it's spear phishing of an accounting related role at your company, it just happens. It's a wide net that these folks are casting. And so they'll get everybody in that wake. And it's really something that you can use as a strategy to have that conversation, to open that topic of conversation. Right. So we invite you to visit us on that. Doug, it's been so great. Obviously, you guys have spent a lot of time thinking about this marketing challenge. We're looking forward to seeing your program sort of get rolled out with a lot of the resources and stuff you're going to offer MSPs as well. I want to thank everybody that joined us today for attending. And thanks, Doug, once again for all your knowledge and participation. We hope to see everybody soon at the next webinar.
All right. Thank you, Louis. Had a great time.